Carol Danvers and Rogue are both iconic characters, both cultivated by a bevy of writers to varying degrees of success, and both with historic roots in the works of Chris Claremont. Though well-researched individually, there was a time, a very important time, when the two characters cohabitated in a singular entity, and though less discussed, that time is no less important. The coalescence of the characters begins with the appalling portrayal of Carol Danvers' sexual assault in Avengers number 200, which is much discussed by comic scholars and critics, as is Claremont's indictment of that story, and redemption of the character in Avengers Annual number 10, which also happens to be the first appearance of Rogue, ultimately leading to Carol's transformation into an even more powerful character, Binary, who finds purpose and direction amongst the stars. But this is not the end of Claremont's work with the character. Indeed, it's as much a beginning, given that not all of Carol makes it to the cosmos. A portion of her remains inside the consciousness of Rogue, Carol's assailant, creating a years-long, symbolically rich exploration of trauma and guilt that helped to define Rogue as a character in ways that still resonate even today. Rogue loses control of her powers after absorbing Carol's. This is in part what drives her to seek the help of the X-Men, placing Rogue in the awkward position of begging the friends of her most famous victim for sanctuary and support. As a man defined by categorical imperatives, Professor X agrees to take her on against the rest of the team's best wishes. Rogue proves herself early and often, yet refuses to commit to the gentler path of the superhero. Things start to unravel for her, however, when Carol's consciousness surfaces unbidden during Rogue's encounter with Carol's ex-boyfriend, Michael Rossi. In a state of tragic confusion, Rogue, or Carol, or some combination of the two, expresses her desire to die at his hands. A shockingly grim portrayal of the impact of guilt, shame, and trauma on this hybrid character. Carol would later surface in a meaningful way in the Genoshan saga, when Rogue, traumatized by sexual harassment, possibly sexual assault, retreats into her own subconscious and finds Carol there, the only one willing to help her. Carol takes control, saving Wolverine and Rogue from the perils of the Genoshan judicial system. The two make peace thereafter, minus the occasional hissy fit on Rogue's part, but it's short-lived, with Rogue's seeming demise occurring in UXM 247. Leading into this, Claremont says goodbye to the character by reminding the reader of Carol's intrinsic sense of values and duty before Rogue takes over in the heat of battle, and Claremont gets to remind us, once again, how willingly Rogue will throttle herself into the path of heroism, even martyrdom. Much later, Rogue pops out of the other side of the Siege Perilous, only to find that her life is again connected to Carol. And this time cohabitation is not an option, in part because Carol is now under the control of the malevolent Shadow King. Rogue wins the fight, but refuses to be merciless with Carol once again, and, in the midst of it, resigns herself to fate. But fate sends Magneto instead of death, and Rogue is once again a whole person. Along the way, the complex and deeply trying cohabitation of the two characters portrays a form of restorative justice, in which Rogue is forced to reckon with the full extent of the damage of her actions, the people she's hurt, the communities that she's fractured, the second and third tier effects that are so rarely explored in this kind of thing. And from there, she's even given a little bit of an opportunity to make amends. The story can also be read, however, as a broader commentary on mental health, on the lingering impacts of trauma for both victim and victimizer, and the extent to which violent actions inevitably commingle the two in a constant struggle with anger and grief and revenge and atonement. These aspects of the story of Rogue and Carol have only recently come into conversation amongst comic scholars, because I published an article about it. But they remain pivotal to the backstory of both characters, not just informing who Rogue and Carol are, but informing the many complex symbolic issues that the duo can speak to. Important issues. The story of Rogue and Carol isn't one of clean resolution or forgiveness or bygones being bygones. It's the story of the many ways we negotiate our existence within the existence of other people. A story told by a half-alien warrior and a superpowered mutant, but a human story nonetheless. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn more about the Claremont Run project, you can follow us on the web at www.claremontrun.com or visit us on Twitter @ClaremontRun.